Yay!
Hi, I'm Justine, the nerdy half of the Breakaway Bravehearts, and today I'm here with Rachele.
Hey!
And you're going to take us on a tour of Pistoia today.
Yes!
Pistoia is a small city in Tuscany, mostly known for its easy access to more popular cities like Florence, Lucca and Bologna. But Pistoia has a lot of appeal of its own, with enough history, museum and shops to satisfy travellers and without the expensive entrance fees and bustling crowds. But Pistoia has a claim to fame that maybe isn't so attractive. It is mentioned twice in Dante's famous poem about hell, the Commedia, and not in a flattering way.
Ai Pistoia Pistoia, che non stanzi di incenerirti.
Pistoia, why don't you burn yourself so you are not going to procreate yourself into other Pistoiese people?
Okay, so clearly the poet had a beef with this place, and I'd love to find out why. Today, Rachele, who was born and raised here, is going to show us around so we can judge for ourselves. Was Dante right? Is Pistoia hell on earth? Or is it a tourist heaven waiting to be discovered? We started our tour in the historical centre of the city. Today it is a lovely place to visit. Sometimes a quiet, peaceful community square, other days a bustling marketplace. Some of the buildings retain their historical use, while others are now museums, dedicated to art and history. During Dante's time, this busy town square was a hive of medieval activity.
Piazza del Duomo is one of the most beautiful squares in Italy because we have all the buildings together. So you have the municipality, you have the cathedral, the bell, the ex-bishop house, the baptisterium and the tribunale.
The Tribunale, or court, was originally built in 1367.
It's still a court right now, so they didn't change the purpose of the entire building.
The building still shows the remains of the medieval ideal of justice.
Can you see that iron thing in there? You have to put your hand in there, and then they put a blade in the middle of the two iron pieces, and then with the blade they cut your hand. That basically at that time was like a sentence of die.
In fact, the square held lots of grim examples of daily life during Dante's time.
So these three holes here were the first example of postal service. Is where they used to put in the medieval time new informations that, like for example, okay, today they're going to kill this person in the middle of the square, inside there. Can you see that thing? That actually you say, it's nothing. No, that was where they used to put the prisoner's head in the past. That means that, of course, they cannot stay like this on the ground. So that means that the level of the square was lower before, because that was where they put the head. So this part of the square was land of the municipality, okay? So where the people used to live and where they used to be judged into the court, okay? But can you see that iron thing in front of the bishop house? That was the limit between the municipality state and the bishop state. So what happened? The court judged people inside the court. Then the jail was in that road on the other side. So when they exit from here, try to put the prisoners into the jail, that road there, it's called the road of the runaway, because they run away from there and they run into that direction to go under the protection of the bishop. Basically in another country, but in the same square.
Like the Road of the Fugitives, many of the streets in Pistoia's old town give you a clear indication of what life was like during Dante's time.
This is Via del Can Bianco, that means the road of the white dog. Because in the past the story is that the family who lived here had this white dog which started howling during the night to say to them that the enemies were at the door of Pistoia, so to save them from the enemies. So to remember this, they put a dog on the main building in the road. This is Via delle Belle, where the prostitute used to live. This road, Via Abbi Pazienza, that means basically it's forgive me, because the legend said that there was a man who was supposed to kill another man. So the first man that appeared, he killed him, but it wasn't the right one, it was another one. So at the funeral, he said to the wife, "Oh, please forgive me because I killed your husband." They gave the name Abbi Pazienza to this road because of that story.
I love the story of the Salt Road, which is where salt was piled high for counting and taxation. Since salt was essential for preserving meat and other foods, it was often used as a political weapon. In the 12th century, a salt war broke out, and later in 1540, Pope Paul III imposed an astronomical tax on salt in Tuscany. As a result, the bread in Pistoia is notoriously saltless. But don't worry, it goes perfectly with the local soup.
You know which one is the most famous Italian Pistoia dish? Basically, it's the carcerato, that means person in a jail. You make a soup with vegetables, broth, and then you put inside bread and the stomach of beef. In Pistoia, it's because we used to have the jail in the city center, and they basically give to the people inside the jail or expired bread and the inside of the beef, because wasn't the best part of the beef.
Honestly, it tasted great. I don't eat a lot of intestines, but this piece was pretty good. It should be. The butcher has been selling his cured intestines in this very marketplace since he was a teen and started working with his father in 1959. He welcomed us warmly and told us about his life in post-war Pistoia during times of poverty and hardship with an infectious smile which made it seem like happy memories. But of course it wasn't. During World War II, Pistoia, like most of Tuscany, suffered great hardships under Nazi occupation. Rachele's grandparents were separated, and her Catholic grandmother helped her Jewish grandfather escape and hide in the mountains surrounding the city. Other Jewish citizens were taken from the ghetto they had lived in for generations and deported for execution. Okay, so some not so pleasant things have happened in this square, and some of the street names are a little dubious. Score 1 to Dante. But to be fair, most towns of the time hosted similar activity. Salt tax, prostitution, fugitives, public punishments and accidental murders were not phenomena unique to Pistoia. So what about some things that are unique to Pistoia's history? Rachele tells us about some of those as well.
My favorite story of Pistoia is the head in front of the church. That's the head of Filippo Tedici. Filippo Tedici was Pistoiese but betrayer, because he let the Lucca people enter into Pistoia in exchange of money, a wife, and power, basically. But they captured him and they killed him. They cut his head and then they bring him back to Pistoia, and they put his head in front of this church to remember to everyone that if you try to betray Pistoia, this is your destiny. Next, where the candle holder was. So everybody, before entering inside the church, they turn off the candle on his face, and that's why his face has now the shape of a pig. But the legend is that the head was the real one, so with a real shape, but then because of his evil side and because of these candles on his face, now it's a pig. And I really love this story. It's my favorite story about Pistoia. I learned this when I was a kid and I still remember it. This is the hospital. According to the legend, was built by this couple, husband and wife, and one night they together dreamed about the Virgin Mary, saying to them that they should build an hospital in the place inside Pistoia where autumn tree, so a tree without leaves and blossoms, start having blossoms. And so they start traveling in Pistoia and they find a tree with blossoms here in autumn, and they decide to build this hospital here, and that's why the hospital name is Ospedale del Ceppo. Ceppo means base of a tree. The important thing is that on the front and side of the Ceppo hospital you can see this wonderful decoration which is made by Della Robbia, and it's made with glass clay. So he used this technique to keep the color the same way as they were at the beginning. So basically it's a technique that he invented and nobody knows what he used and how he could keep the colors like this. And this is one of the most important clay things in the world. But if you go, I think it's on that side, there's a, can you see it? There should be one person without a head. We need to find that. Because when people start studying how to recreate the same effect on clay in modern times, basically Della Robbia said that he put the secret of that inside a head. So they start searching inside one of the real head, so one of the clay head. But then he stopped them and he said, no, it's inside my head. So nobody knows about that. But one of these statues is without the head. We need to check which one.
Yeah.
I was born here.
You were born here?
Here. But basically everybody in Pistoia was born in here. My age, I mean. There are 7 wine windows in Pistoia. Mom, do you know a story about the buchette del vino che servivano?
Venivano la notte, era tutto buio, la gente non poteva uscire perché gli hanno tagliato il collo.
Basically,
servivano
going
il vino,
out at night
i calici
was
di
dangerous
vino.
in the past. So basically, each road had one of these, so people from the road could go there. It's like kind of bar from the ancient times. So they went there, they knock at these, they give the money and take back a glass of
Nel
wine.
Medioevo tu vedevi morti da tutte le parti.
What she's saying is that it wasn't funny to live in Pistoia in medieval time. And you have to think that at that time, wine was an important part of the food. It was a kind of supplement, and the water was bad quality. There was also a rule for church people, the Benedettini monk, that was to give them at least 1 liter of wine per day.
Actually, wine windows were common throughout Florence as well, and the enterprising and thirsty Florenzians introduced them during the recent COVID-19 lockdown period. They've remained popular now that the tourists have flooded back, and there are more than 150 wine windows currently operating in Florence city centre. Also like Florence and many other medieval Italian towns, Pistoia has its fair share of beautiful churches, most of which still operate and allow tourist entry.
So this church is, I think, the most beautiful church in Pistoia. It's Sant'Andrea Church, 1301. Old, but inside there is a wonderful pulpito. You know the pulpito, what that is? So it's basically where the priest used to climb to talk to the population. Okay, so there are stairs, and that's this wonderful pulpito, which was made by Giovanni Pisano, and everybody thinks that it's the most beautiful pulpito in the world. But this one is a good example of a medieval church, because it's without any windows, and the only windows are there are little if you compare them with the giant building that this church is. Basically, in the medieval time, the religion was supposed to be something that scary people, to keep them away from the bad things. So the church could not have been so full of lights and joy like the modern church. So you can easily recognize when a church is ancient from the medieval time or from Roman time, because it's like this, without windows. If you see new churches, like from Renaissance, they are full of lights, because the idea behind the religion changed at that point. So from something that should scare you, religion became something that should guide you to the right way, to the right decision. And that's why the modern church, they have a lot of lights inside. If you go to the Piazza del Duomo church, you can also see the crypt underground, because the medieval church was built on top of the Romanian one. When the paganic religions were all over the cities, the first Christian people used to hide underground to celebrate their religions. So on top of that, they build the medieval church, and on that they build sometimes the Renaissance church, or what happens later. If I was Catholic, I would like to get married in this church. I think it's the most beautiful in Pistoia. San Bartolomeo is the saint protector of the kids. Yes. So every year in August, we celebrate in this square the San Bartolomeo Day. And in the morning, the kids can go inside the church and they can be basically oiled. It's the name, unti in Italian. And with this oil that they put on their head, they prevent diseases like flu or sore throat and bad luck. Okay, we have to stay in silence. I love this church because when you enter in this church, you feel something not related to religion, but just because of the atmosphere that you can breathe inside, because of the colors, because of the, I don't know, and it's the most ancient in Pistoia, so maybe because of that, I don't know.
Along with the churches, Pistoia has a medieval mystery, a Medici fortress, and a number of other interesting buildings to visit. Let's start with the medieval mystery, a stone engraving which has had historians baffled for centuries.
And now we need to search it, because it's not easy to find. Should be... You find it? Yes, found it! That one. So they try to understand what that means, and nobody knows that. They study this since 1544, and they don't know. Some people think that it is like an invocation of the Archangel Michele. Some other people think that it is just a signature of who built the church. But the important thing is that there are 3 more of these in Italy. There is another one near Lucca, another one is in Pisa, and nobody knows what that means. That is not Italian, that's not Latin, that's not Vulgare, so we don't know.
Another building of historical interest is the city's fortress. Originally built in 1331, it was later developed by Cosimo Medici and served as a fortress and barracks for many years, later becoming a jail.
Coat of arms, it's from the Medici family. And you can recognize all the Medici family because of the balls. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 balls.
Currently, the fortress is open to visitors and houses a few small exhibits, which come with an information sheet translated in English.
Okay, let's see what's behind this door. Oh, look. This was where they used to take the donkeys and horses, so basically the stable.
It is not a fully curated museum, which is actually kind of refreshing. You can wander through the original foundations, discovering remains at your own pace.
Oh, that's a chapel. But basically, all the powerful families in the past, they used to have a chapel inside their villa or their residences.
In Rachele's time, it was used as a summer outdoor cinema.
Yes, it was a cinema when I was a kid. I watched here, for sure, Glacier Era #1.
I highly recommend walking around the fortress walls, which will give you an excellent view out over the city. Another building worth visiting is the town's library, which at one time was the workplace of poet Giosuè Carducci, the first Italian to receive the Nobel Prize in Literature. Ironically, it is not Carducci's poems that are on display in the library, but a famous reproduction of, you guessed it, Dante's work. The entire Commedia written on a single piece of paper, albeit a very large one. This version is a reproduction written by a man with a unique talent for writing words in extreme miniature. He somehow managed to fit all 14,233 lines of the comedy on one piece of paper.
How is it possible to make a book like that? So basically the legend is that there was this man with a beloved son, and the son died one day, no reasons. So the dad got mad about that, and he started developing this disease which make him like see everything bigger. Okay. So he started rewriting the Divina Commedia just to spend time doing that. Yeah. And for him was in a regular way. But for us is all the Divina Commedia in one page.
Dante mentioned Pistoia twice in the Commedia.
Vita bestial mi piacque e non umana, siccome al mulchi fui son vanni fucci.
I'm Gianni Fucci and I like living like a beast, not human. And I'm a bastard. I'm Gianni Fucci the beast, 2 times beast, and Pistoia was my right place to live. So basically it's saying that everyone in Pistoia is a kind of beast.
So who are these beasts that live in Pistoia?
Rachele, tell us about yourself.
And about myself, I'm 36. I have an Instagram page, which is L'Ontre on the Road. That means otter on the road. It's about food, travel, Pistoia, me, my wedding, my boyfriend.
And your family's been in Pistoia how many generations?
Oh, forever, I think.
Forever.
So basically, yeah, when I was a kid, I didn't like Pistoia because I thought it was like a little village pretending to be a city. But then also working with a lot of people from all over the world and seeing other people think that Pistoia is actually a good city, you see it from another point of view. And you understand in that moment that we are walking on history every day. People is super warm. So basically now I think that Pistoia is not that bad.
I have to say, I agree. The people here are warm and welcoming. Far from being beasts, I found the Pistoiese to be exemplars of human connection. This, I think, is demonstrated best by the example of one of their most revered citizens of modern history.
This man, he was a clochard, but he also was a poet. He used to sleep outside, drunk, almost everywhere in Pistoia. Here found a place to stay during the night time, the poet Rachele, free man. He used to tell this story about journalists that when he was about to turn 100 years old, they went to his house to interview him and to know how he could reach that age with all that energy. So basically he said to them, oh yes, I just didn't smoke, didn't drink any wine, and didn't get any woman in my life. Meanwhile, they were there asking him questions. They heard this noise from upstairs, like bam, bam, boom, bam, and they were, oh, sorry, can you repeat again? Because this noise, oh, yes, I'm sorry about this noise. My father is upstairs with his fiancée. So basically is that if you drink, you smoke, and you have fiancé, love the fiancé, you can live more than 100.
It's really a great story of what must have been a great man. In fact, the Pistoiese respected this man so much that in his honour they have created a fictional street. The homeless can now register their address at Via Rachele. This non-existent street acts as a conventional registered address, and this is important because it allows them to use social and health services, and it reduces discrimination against those experiencing homelessness. I think Turini would have been really happy with this. And I've been really happy with my tour of Pistoia. So I'm confused as to why Dante had such a problem with it.
Maybe he was so angry with Pistoiese people. Pistoia was black dwarfs, he was white dwarfs, so they were also politically different. If you think about that, then you reconsider everything, and maybe you can see the Dante's point of view.
Okay, so that does explain it. Pistoia is a fabulous little city which had the misfortune to be the victim of Dante's shameless attempt to score political points to fuel his career. It's understandable for the time, I guess. And actually, I think that's what I've loved about Pistoia. The insight into that time in history that can be seen in nearly every street. If you're looking for a place to visit where you can enjoy that history at a relaxing pace, then I recommend you add Pistoia to your list. Of course, if you want to see the mega cathedrals and castles, you'll need to head down to Florence, which is a whole different ballgame. Subscribe now to get notification of our next video, which is going to show you how to experience Florence in a day. Trust me, it's a trip which needs a lot of planning, so we're going to give you all the tips you need to make it doable. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please share, like, and comment. I want to really warmly thank Rachele for her fabulous tour and her great stories. I've put the link to her Instagram, L'Entrée on the Road, in the description below, along with links to our website, which has blogs on all our other trips around the world.
Yeah.
No, don't put that in the video.
I'm not going to put it in the video.
Because it's just bad words.
Don't put when I speak English, otherwise everybody gonna nobody's gonna follow anymore your page.
Mot d'amour, des mots de tous les jours, et ça me c'est quelque chose. Il est entre de mon cœur.
That's recorded. I'll include that for sure.
That's French.